This week, we are hearing from Savannah. Michelle Leon and I are together this week to answer letters to Lauren. And for those of you who are new to this platform, Michelle is one of our expert coaches here at Lauren LaRusso Coaching. And y'all know that I love being in conversation with Michelle because she is just so profoundly good at, and her insight and expertise always enriches the weeks that she's on Letters to Lauren with me. So thank you for being here, Michelle. And let's launch into this letter from Savannah. Savannah writes, my partner and I have been together for 11 years. We were due to get married last September, but he suddenly got cold feet. He was out of my life for 5 months, then came back, begging me to forgive him and get our life back on track to get married. 2 months in, and I discovered he was cheating. I also found out it was the reason he left to begin with. On discovery, he immediately ended it with her and spent a week trying to do everything he could to repair things with me. Then seemed to be struggling with grieving the loss of his affair partner and asked for space to process. How does one set up boundaries for space? Because space could just mean going back to cheat. Does he even deserve space? Sincerely, Savannah. What it sounds like to me, just to conceptualize this letter from the get-go, it sounds to me like, you've been together for a long time, and there was a divergence at a certain point where your partner began an affair. And obviously, as betrayed partners do, you were left out of that decision point. And so, you think you're on track for one thing, and meanwhile, he's going sideways over here. And so you came to the intersection in which you discovered this. And oftentimes that's this moment of like severe and sudden sobriety for the person who went sideways and stepped out and had the affair. So you can consider him sort of like this lost person, right? He took a path in a different direction and he's lost in the woods over here in this other relationship, the affair relationship. And then discovery is like a giant wake up call to reality, and he had a choice to make. And the choice was you, right? That it sounds like it was unequivocally you. Now, what you bring up in the letter is important for all of our listeners to hear, which is that he was in another relationship. And so then there is a process to ending that one, right? And so he's over here trying to save his relationship with you, but he's not actually ready to do that in earnest, even though he wants to, because he's still caught between two worlds and he still actually has to end and process the end of that other relationship, what it meant to him, what it gave to him, what it showed to him. We have no idea, but that's his work to do. And I think that if you two are going to move forward in your relationship and you're going to be together and you have a future together, or you even want to be able to entertain the idea of continuing on that path towards marriage and commitment and a future together, he actually does need to take the time to process the choice, because the initial choice upon affair discovery was the knee-jerk choice. It was the choice out of desperation, right? To save your relationship. But it wasn't a choice out of conscious clarity. It was the sort of survival instinct choice. So that says a lot, right? Because he wanted to be with you and he wanted to save your relationship. But in terms of its long-term execution, I would like to see someone in his shoes and someone in your shoes. You deserve to have someone who's choosing back into you fully. I would like to see him take some time to actually work through clarifying for himself why he is ending this affair, resolving for himself why perhaps despite what it gave to him, it is not, the answer for him. And I would like him to return with perhaps some clarity about why he would be choosing, back into the relationship with you again. Because in the future, when things get hard or temptations arise, as they will for everybody, we need to be able to have that inner conversation with ourselves. We need to be able to dialogue with ourselves consciously and say, why am I not taking this path? Oh, it's because I chose into this relationship for all of these conscious reasons that I can recall for myself now. Because it's so easy to forget why we chose our partners when life gets complicated or boring or hard, or, we kind of have attention from someone new. It's really easy to forget that. And we need to be able to answer that for ourselves so that we don't just, follow it again. You both deserve to do that work and then consciously choose into a relationship 2.0 together. Michelle, what are you thinking?
Yeah, it's so understandable to be conflicted about this, right? On the one hand, you're grappling with the pain and betrayal, and on the other hand, you're being asked to recognize your partner's emotions about someone who caused so much harm to the relationship and such a harmful and hurtful time in the relationship. And especially it was a calling off of a wedding too. So again, we were even like one step further in this 11-year relationship to get to that next level. And so understanding all that, such a delicate part of the healing process. We talk about there's the his work, your work, and then the couple's work. And certainly for him, there is work to do. The end question there was about, does he even deserve it? I would say yes, I think it's important. I don't know if deserving is the word, but is it necessary? Maybe is a better question as opposed to being deserving of it. I think it's important to do, and to rush past it or to pretend it's not a difficult ending to process or situation to put to rest and to have some closure. And I don't mean closure as in going and meeting, but it's emotional closure about that. So important to go through the process and all of the steps without trying to fast forward and get to the end and get to the altar and pretend this never happened. It's a lengthy process. We have to just go through. There is no around. What does this look like in terms of respecting that I have my own needs here in this relationship to in the healing process to feel safe, and I want to allow you to also feel safe to come forward with these types of conversations when he's coming forward and saying I am mourning or I'm not feeling that great, that he feels safe to be able to come forward with that, but also that it should be mutually safe, right? Mutually safe for him to come forward and ask for what he needs, and safe for you to express that that doesn't feel right. Where can we negotiate this healing process? So for me, I guess to some, I'm saying, yes, it's important to feel for him to mourn and go through that process and to give it that the proper ending that it requires to be able to move forward in this relationship.
I think that's 100% true. And I think that what you're highlighting is that the person who steps out, the person who's unfaithful, actually does need the time and space to get clear. And some of that is a bit of a sobering up,
Yeah, it's
right?
hard to hear for
It,
sure.
it's so hard, but coming back to your conscious life, boots on the ground, real life, day in, day out, and asking yourself what you want for yourself, who you want to be with, who you want to be, right? Those are really important value and self identity questions that anyone who steps out of a relationship really deserves to take that inventory, and not only for themselves but also for the sake of the betrayed. And so this is what I want to highlight too, which is that, does he even deserve space? And I love that you said, is it necessary? It's not about deserving, it's that it's necessary. I completely agree, because space could just mean going back to cheat. Yeah, it could. And that's a decision, right? And so then the fear is that that would be all you would need to know about where his decisions lied, or that he wasn't ready to recommit to your relationship. And the idea of that is so devastating for a betrayed spouse who is just hoping that there's a straight line in this choice, right? We really want to be able to preserve the relationship and the bond we've had for so long with our partner, that we want them to choose back into us and do that in a straight line. And the tricky and heartbreaking thing about betrayal and an affair is that it often, actually, I would say most often, isn't a straight line. And that is a scary and devastating thing for a betrayed partner. So, what's coming up for me is that Savannah's question on space is actually about control. And betrayed partners are really caught in this space of feeling the need to control, really because they're trying to protect themselves from further hurt, right? If I loosen my grip on this person and on our relationship, am I going to be shown some things that make this relationship unsalvageable? And it's all about power and control. How do I take the power back? How do I regain my sense of control and safety in this relationship? And I'm afraid if I loosen my grip on this person, that the choices they make will answer that question for me. And that's such a primal fear. And I think that the more evolved version of us needs to be able to let go and actually like quiet the noise around an affair and let that person have the space to follow whatever path it is. And if the path comes back to you, then you will both be better for it because they will have done that inventory. So I would encourage you to lean into letting go a bit of control and focusing on yourself during this time and asking yourself what you need, from this relationship moving forward, just as he should be asking himself the same, so that you can both come back to the table and unpack what led to this, right? Sometimes for couples, you end up having the most honest conversations you've ever had in these junction points, and you end up knowing each other more fully than you might have otherwise. So let's see, it's either going to be a makeup and a wake up or a breakup, right? And so we don't know what the end result is. And that's the hardest part, is kind of hanging in there without certainty. Any other thoughts, Michelle?
I think fundamentally, when it comes to such a trauma like this, trauma is usually characterized by, a lack of safety and a lack of control. I think what really comes is a lack of control. I did not have any control. So if I can control it, I won't be blindsided again. I won't be traumatized again. And so how can you do your work, I do my work, we do our work, and the conversations continuing to flow. And when we aren't able to have those, I think that also is an answer.
That's exactly right. The worst thing that I see couples do is something that you alluded to a few minutes ago, Michelle, which is like just like choose back into the relationship as like a self-protective, like I'm done, I'm going, right? And it's not authentic and no one's done the work and had the hard conversation. So the unfaithful just like simmers in their shame
Yeah.
and like jumps back in, but without it being like an authentic self inventory. It's just like all about like taking the hits, being wrong, and then preserving the relationship. And they have lost themselves a long time ago. And the risk of that is that it ends up coming back to bite you later in some way, shape, or form. And so as hard as it is, I actually would encourage you to have a discussion about perhaps taking space that is valuable for both of you. Be clear about the purpose of space and then have a plan for coming back together to check in on what it illuminated for you. Savannah, good luck, and I hope this helps.